Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is with immense gratitude and deep humility that I stand before you today. I would like to begin by extending my heartfelt thanks to the Rector of the University of West Attica, Professor Caldis, to the Vice-Rectors, Professor Calandonis, Professor Papagrigorio, Professor Xanthos, to the Deans, to the Head of the Early Childhood Education and Care Department, Professor Bedrianis, to the host for offering this remarkable and historical space, Dr. Skiadas, members of the Early Childhood Education and Care Department, who I had the pleasure of meeting with yesterday, and members of the academic community. I know it's very unusual for someone as young as I to receive such an award, and I'm very thankful for this profound recognition of my life's work at the Seleni Institute. And now on to my husband. I might cry. George, thank you for your kind words of introduction. I can't look at you. I am ever grateful that the universe put you on my path when I was 21 years old. I cannot imagine how any of my dreams to improve the mental health of so many would have been possible without your encouragement and unwavering belief in me. So, what is Seleni and why did we start it? Seleni is a non-profit dedicating to transforming people's emotional health through patient care, professional training, and advocacy. Simply put, we treat women suffering from postpartum depression and anxiety, mental health challenges associated with infertility, miscarriage, stillbirth, and early infant loss. These issues do not discriminate by social class, race, or nationality. They are universal struggles. We started Seleni because we saw a fundamental gap in the field of psychology. There were plenty of institutes dedicated to the mental health of children and the mental health of adults in the United States. However, there were very few tackling the enormous burden of poor mental health in women and their families during the childbearing years. No one seemed to connect the two. No one seemed to connect that a child's mental health is very dependent on their parents' mental health. So we sought to make that connection. The burden of having a parent with depression and anxiety has deep implications for society. Children of depressed parents are 12 times more likely to suffer from a learning disability by the age of 5, are more prone to depression and anxiety themselves, and are more likely to use drugs and alcohol by the time they're teenagers. Did you know that 1 in 5 women struggle with postpartum anxiety or depression? And that for every woman struggling, 50% of the time, their spouse is also suffering from postpartum depression and anxiety. This implies that 1 to 2 in every 10 fathers has a mental health condition postpartum. Let that sink in for a minute. So when we first started Seleni, it really indeed was a women's issue. Now the research is showing us that it actually includes fathers. So what happens if these potential patients are not identified and treated? Well, the short answer is that they suffer and their children suffer, and the cycles of poor mental health in families perpetuate. Seleni aims to break these cycles so that future generations may benefit. Let me illustrate. A patient who I shall call Eileen came to see me in 2017. She was 38 years old, and she was an accomplished infectious disease physician and professor working in a very famous cancer hospital in New York. I'm sure you can all guess which one. She was passionate about her work and tended to the very sickest of cancer patients who were in their last weeks or months of life. Anyone who met her would have seen a very strong and resilient individual. In fact, this is how she presented initially. However, as we started to talk, it was clear that she was struggling with acute postpartum anxiety. Eileen had a 3-month-old baby boy. She had experienced a healthy pregnancy, but had had a very long labor that ended in a C-section due to her son's heart rate dropping continuously. Following the birth of her son, she went home. Okay, she had a difficult birth. Was at home for 2 days, and then she began to have severe headaches and high blood pressure. Eileen was readmitted into hospital without her baby and treated for preeclampsia, a life-threatening condition, while her husband and her mother cared for her baby at home. Eileen's separation from her baby and husband and her postpartum complication led to the development of severe postpartum anxiety. When Eileen and I first met, she spoke very rapidly. Her palms and face were sweaty. She could not sleep at night. She had terrifying thoughts that something bad might happen to her or her baby, and she was unable to breastfeed due to the long separation she had had from her baby. It was truly heartbreaking to see such an accomplished person who on the exterior looked perfectly put together, but whose every minute was psychologically challenging and fraught with desperation. Eileen's husband, John, was also suffering from anxiety and could not support her emotionally as he was too taxed with his own difficulties and providing for his family. Over the course of therapy, Eileen improved, her anxiety reduced, her intrusive thoughts disappeared, her sleep normalized, and she went back to being a role model at work and began to mentor young pregnant physicians and physician mothers in her hospital. In overcoming postpartum anxiety, Eileen was able to eventually have a second child with newfound confidence and increased resilience. So, what are some of the lessons learned from taking an idea and making it into reality? It sounds very easy, right? Well, it wasn't. The first lesson I want to share with you is that it's really important to be brave. Henry Ford once said, "Those who think they can and those who think they can't are both correct." I have found that the first step in doing anything is to be told that it cannot be done. For large tracts of my life, I have been blessed to not be believed in. It actually was a blessing. It challenged me to think and rethink, to re-examine my preconceptions of myself. It helped me to be brave when I could have chosen to be timid and play it safe. It motivated me to prove myself, not only to the non-believers in me, but first and foremost to myself. This is quite critical, particularly when you're helping patients through challenges or team members in working towards a difficult goal. You have to imbue them with this sense of bravery, that they can do this. The second lesson is meaning. For as Viktor Frankl, a concentration camp survivor and founder of logotherapy, said, "He who knows the why can deal with any how." Too often, we're encouraged to go out into the world and find our happiness, even at the detriment of another. Happiness is a very elusive goal, and I don't believe anyone can be happy without having a true sense of purpose and meaning. Knowing you're making a difference, however small, be it to one person or a group of people. For me, understanding why I was working towards destigmatizing mental health and breaking negative cycles of poor emotional health propelled me to move through periods of great difficulty, and believe me, there were many over the years. The third and final lesson is to hope. The value of faith in a world in which we're bombarded with negativity, conflicts, time constraints, can lead us down to the path towards embitterment, a lack of gratitude, and feelings of emptiness. Life is not supposed to be easy, and faith can make the difference between giving up and moving forwards. And what better time for all of us to identify our bravery, our purpose, and our faith than right now, for it is never too late. From Buvulina to Eleanor Roosevelt, they didn't let a lack of energy or their fears detract them from following their destinies. And I too hope to follow in their footsteps. I thank you all for listening to me and for this honorary doctorate.